I'm Elisa Parker. It is the Wild and Scenic Film Festival, 22 years of this festival. It's one of the largest of its kind in the United States, and it's always such an honor to be part of it here with the Wild and Scenic Media Lounge. We are based right here in downtown Nevada City, California, in the Sierras. Our home river is the Yuba River, and it's honored to connect with extraordinary action heroes who are telling the stories, including our next guest. It's an honor to have Rucha Chitnis here with us, and she is a director and producer of, if I get this right, Von versus Vikas? Is that right, Rucha?
Van versus Vikas.
And what does, and Van means?
So Van is forest in Hindi, and Vikas is progress. So it's forest versus progress.
Well, so in your film, first of all, I noticed that even the word progress or development, like it's a not just a trigger word, but it's an alarm, because it often means something is going to be taking over, like talking about the forest and such. In your home state, we're talking about is you were saying in Bombay and in India. Can you tell us about the story? And well, first just give us the premise of it.
So Van versus Vikas interrogates this mythology of modern India's idea of development, of progress, which is completely antithetical to the Adivasi indigenous worldview on what progress looks like. And, you know, since India's independence, nearly 60 million Indians have been displaced from their homelands in the name of development projects. So it's dams, it's extractive industries, it's mining industries. And often the people who are displaced are Adivasi indigenous peoples, farmers, Dalit communities. And I think what this film is really trying to show another version of progress, which is, you know, in coexistence with Mother Earth and also with human rights. Because in India right now, what we're seeing an ecological crisis, but also a human rights crisis. So the protagonists of this film are an indigenous Adivasi family who have lived in Are Forest, which is the last remaining urban jungle in India, in India's financial capital, which is Mumbai. And they're all artists. They are Varli artists, which is a traditional form of painting. They're also activists. And because they've grown up in the jungle and they worship the tiger spirit, they have been fighting for their rights as indigenous peoples, but also for the protection of nature. In that forest, there have documented 8 leopards, rare species of, you know, insects and butterflies. But this beloved forest is beleaguered. It's surrounded by 40 development projects. Everything from film industry projects to military operations to a huge dairy. But this fight is a 7-year movement led by youth, led by indigenous youth who are from the forest, to stop the construction of a metro rail project, a metro car shed, which threatens to cut down, you know, thousands of trees. And of course, you know, impacts the ecology and the, you know, the lives of indigenous
their livelihood.
People. Yeah.
People who've been there for, like you said, centuries.
Yes.
And in the film, it talks about, like, it seems like almost it's a 7-year fight. Almost overnight, though, it's like the metro line. They're starting to develop it. And can you talk more about that? And
yes.
Okay.
So the Boer family, they live in the jungle, and basically, what happens is that the government, the BJP government in the state, wants to build this metro car shed in the jungle, in the forest, when an alternative exists in another place. That's an absolute legitimate alternative that exists. With the whole political election cycle, we had a new government placed, which is much more environmentally friendly government. So this youth-led movement is galvanized for years, but it's very intergenerational. You see children, you see teenagers, and you also see elders who are part of this movement to stop the metro car shed. And it's a powerful example and a rare example of solidarity of a movement that is led by Adivasi youth in solidarity with the non-indigenous youth who live in Bombay.
Wow.
And a lot of people in Bombay had no idea that indigenous communities have lived in the forest for generations. And whatever has been protected is because of them. You know, like I said, the Varlis, they worship the tiger spirit, and there are 8 leopards in the jungle. So this movement is galvanized for years, and with the new Shiv Sena government coming into place, this movement sort of has a tremendous good news, which is the government declares it as a forest.
Wow.
And that is a huge victory
Wow.
for the Boyer family, and for Bombay residents, really. And then, unfortunately, there's a political coup. So you have a huge victory after years of mobilization, and overnight there's a coup, and then you have the right-wing BJP government, and overnight they undo the win. And so the Metro Car Shed, it's their pet project, and it's, they're fighting against state repression, and it's a hard fight. And so this film was a roller coaster because I filmed it before COVID, and then in COVID I came back from India and there was a lockdown, etc. Then there was the good news, and then there was the bad news.
So where is it at right now? It's an emotional, being engaged in this activist role. And by the way, I mean, even saying activist, like we're all activists in this, and especially when it all touches us, when it's in your backyard and it's touching every single one of us. So everyone needs to be involved and engaged, right?
Yeah.
And this is even in your home state.
Yes.
Right. So like, even I want to talk to you about just the background of this, like what prompted you to tell this story in the first place?
So I'm a sort of a feminist documentarian, and I'm really interested in counter narratives from grassroots movements, frontline communities who are, reimagining a different way of being, right? Which is in alignment with rights of nature and respecting human rights. And I think the story of extractivism and capitalism is a very new story. But the story of land and resources as commons, of reciprocity, of responsibility, of coexistence is a longer story. Often it's just like remembering what was, but also what was erased. And I think indigenous people's resistance has been systematically, erased by history books, etc. But for example, the very first resistance against British colonialism was indigenous fighters, the Munda tribe, Tilka Manji, which we weren't taught when I was growing up. Or the Manipuri women's resistance fighting the taxation of rice by the British. So I think so much of this is, we say another, like Arundhati Roy says, another world is possible. No, another world has always existed. This is a new story. And these alternatives are critical right now to be centered, to pay attention to recognize and resource and celebrate the leadership of indigenous communities who are fighting all kinds of battles in India right now, from coal mining, other extractive industries, port projects. And we have been taught to believe that this is it. There's no other way possible.
That's it. That's how it is. Right.
Yeah. But this jungle exists and leopards exist. And so it is in the financial capital of India. So I think I even though there was a devastating news in the end, I think the ripples of youth advocacy, the ripples of their recognition of Adivasi leadership, that is so important, and activism is difficult, and policy overnight can, things can shift.
Things can change.
But you can still recognize the possibilities and hope of grassroots mobilization and resistance.
Right. And I think too, it's a big part as well, Rucha, where we as a society have to reimagine what's possible. And sometimes it's imagining something that we haven't even seen before, and so that requires vision, but the imagination aspect to know that we are often seeking something or striving for something that maybe hasn't existed before. Not that we're necessarily working in a vacuum, but it's an interesting process. And I see that just knowing that this was a youth-led movement is really inspiring for this. So you're in the forest, you're filming this. Like, how did this experience change how you're showing up in general with the work that you're doing right now?
So a lot of my work has been on the intersection of climate, environmental justice, food sovereignty, rights of women farmers. And so, of course, it is not surprising to see powerful indigenous Adivasi resistance to protect forests and land and resources. But I think in the context of one of the largest cities in India, in the financial capital, that millions have been disconnected from not knowing that Adivasis have lived here and whatever remains, even that understanding, it's jarring. Like I said, when I grew up, indigenous history and resistance was erased. I didn't grow up learning about it. So I think it's a muscle that you have to continue to build, is these counter narratives, these histories, what has been erased. And those of us who come from dominant communities or any sense of privilege, it is our responsibility to listen to the leadership of Adivasi communities and have humility, and support grassroots movements, right? Support and center those stories and leadership. I think that is the only way forward. I truly believe that. We need an intersectional feminist revolution that respects the rights of Mother Earth and respects human rights, because it's a crisis. We are in a crisis, but there's also an abundance of possibilities. There's an abundance of traditional knowledge, solutions, and I think that's what is the power of storytelling. Is you can recognize that and not feel completely paralyzed by the enormity of what is unfolding.
Right, like being here at Wild and Scenic, it's knowing that we all have a part in this.
Yes,
and we can all make a difference, and it's all our own responsibility to show up in the best way that we can, and be inspired by stories like what Rucha is sharing with us all, and how that relates to our own lives and looking in our own backyards. And that's a big part of Wild and Scenic. Rucha, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Or what are you working on right now?
I have 2 films on the back burner which I need to finish. One is from India, one is a local food sovereignty story in Oakland. And I work for an international disability rights fund, so that's my main job. And I get to be with movement people all the time and see what's possible from the point of view of also disability justice and human rights. So life is very full, and pray for me that I'll finish my film.
She's going to finish her films. All right. We'll see that. We see that for you. Thank you so much, Rucha. I see you completing it. And then we look forward to seeing you back here at Wild and Scenic when you have Rucha. Thanks so much. I'm Elisa Parker. This is Wild and Scenic. It's 22 years, and we are thrilled that you're here with us, and we'll be back in just a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Rucha.